this morning. And joining us right now is Representative Ashley Hinson from the 1st District of Iowa. That's God's country for me. That's where I'm at.
100% it is, Chip. Yeah. Good to be with you.
You bet. I'm glad that you're here. You've been spending some time back in Iowa. What are you hearing from the good people here in Northeast Iowa?
Yeah. Well, I just finished my second 20-county tour. I, made a pledge to visit all the counties in the district at least every quarter. And, I think the number one and number two issues that I'm hearing about are workforce and taxes. Everywhere I go, people are concerned about getting people back to work. Our small businesses all have help wanted signs in the doors and are all looking for workers. So that, I think, is probably the number one issue that consistently I'm hearing from everyone. And then everybody's concerned about, like normal, what's happening here in Washington, D.C. with taxes. And I think everybody's concerned about, capital gains and stepped up basis and what could happen with those. And so those are the things that I'm hearing a lot about as I travel through the district.
Okay, so on the workforce side of things, what can be done? I know that we've got the extended benefits are rolling off later this year, and they're off in Iowa now. But what else can we do to get people back to work?
Well, and I think Iowa obviously has led the way on this. I'm proud to talk about that all the time out here in Washington, D.C. as we look at some of these other states that have chosen to continue to pay people to stay home. That just paralyzes our entire economy because so many of our Iowa small businesses supply other businesses in other states who are making things and shipping them all over the world. And so that supply chain is incredibly interrupted when you have policies like this that continue to be in place. So I'm hopeful that by the end of the summer, we'll see things turn around. Many of the conversation I've had with our local chambers, I've said, if you're hearing from people that this hasn't improved, flag it for us so we can at least ask questions and try and figure out solutions to these workforce challenges that we're seeing. But ultimately, we just need to encourage people to get back to work. Those who've left the workforce, and there are a lot of them who've just decided, I'm not going back. That's a huge challenge. And so we have some recruitment work to do. Iowa, obviously, I like to say we have green oceans. And that's what I tell people. As far as quality of life is concerned, Iowa, you can truly have it all. So I'm out here telling that story as much as possible.
Gotcha. Representative Hinson, one thing that I don't understand is when it comes to tax policy or proposed tax policy, there should be the ability to do evaluation of what it will mean for family farms, for small businesses. Mm-hmm. And on the capital gains and the step up in basis, it seems like there's two different schools that are giving much different results. Texas A&M put out a study that says, listen, this is going to be detrimental to small business. Mm-hmm. And then we talk to people from the Biden administration. It's like, no, it's not going to hurt small businesses in America. What's the truth?
Well, I believe the Biden administration is wrong in this regard, and I've let them know. I think that rural America, farmers in Iowa, they're under attack from this administration right now, and so I think it's absolutely my job to fight for Iowa's producers. Our biofuel industry in Congress is also under attack. You talk about overstep in regulation. We've seen a huge overstep in that by repealing the Navigable Waters Protection Rule. So I'm calling on the administration to reverse course on these policies. And it was interesting when I got word that they were talking about granting reprieves to oil refiners a few weeks ago. Yeah. It was the day after they had repealed that Navigable Waters Rule. So I called our contact with the Biden administration and gave her a piece of my mind because ultimately they keep, asking the question, why are we losing rural America? It's because they're torpedoing the success of rural America. And so that's something that I've been very vocal about with them. They need to listen to Iowa farmers and our biofuels producers. They absolutely deserve a seat at the table in these conversations. And it's clear to me that there's a disconnect in the White House.
Senator Grassley likes to say that regarding WOTUS, if we would roll back to the Obama era rulings on waters of the U.S., Senator Grassley likes to say that we need a permit for typical or standard farming practices here in the state. Is it really that bad?
Yeah, pretty much everything. Yeah. I mean, if you look at a map of the land that is deemed federally regulated under WOTUS, in Iowa. I think it's quite shocking. I have one hanging up in my office here as a good reminder, but it's almost entirely red, little tiny dots, literally dots of white. You can barely see the parts that wouldn't be regulated by the federal government. So it's of my opinion that bureaucrats in D.C. who've never been on a farm in Iowa shouldn't be telling Iowans how to farm their land. And I see this as a great overstep, and we're going to try to fight it as much as we can.
Yeah. What are you learning about how Iowa farmers are voluntarily working on cleaning up runoff and I'm talking about conservation issues here, Representative Hinson.
Yeah. And I actually had a chance to see some of those practices in person. I visited Wayne Frederick's farm, and we walked through all of those things that he's doing to help be a better steward of his land, cover crops, the buffer strips, the natural prairie that he's planted, and for the pollinators. I mean, there are things in place that our farmers are doing on a voluntary basis or with minimal public-private partnership, and that's exactly how we should be doing this. And there's measurable results, and I think that's the most important thing to say here is, we can actually measure water runoff coming out of that before it goes into a bioreactor, coming out on the other side, and see that dramatic reduction in nutrients in our water. So our farmers absolutely need to be a part of this conversation. That's something that I've been trumpeting loud and clear to not only the administration, but to Secretary Buttigieg with the Department of Transportation, trying to make sure that they understand as they're having these climate-focused discussions that our folks in Iowa are doing it right. They're a great model for how to do this, and let private sector take the lead on this, not the federal government.
Right. And I know that a lot of the conservation issues play into what has been a priority for you even before you were a representative, and that's flood mitigation, because you covered the major flood that we had in eastern Iowa back in 2008.
Right. And I remember those days very vividly, and I was doing the math. It was 13 years ago this June. And I mean, you talk about the flood and the aftermath and the damage to our land also. So it is an absolute priority for me to make sure when you talk about these practices, it's more than just nutrient reduction, it's soil protection as well. And there are many things that we can be doing to help that, and that obviously helps to mitigate flooding as well. I'm actually working with FEMA, just had a briefing from them last week about the new flood insurance program. Should be better for the majority of Iowans in terms of affordability, which I'm encouraged by. But ultimately, we have to have good flood mitigation plans in place to be able to not only protect, but to make our communities more resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100% there. You mentioned the potential for small refinery exemptions, even lowering the renewable volume obligations. We're waiting for details there. What was the message that you sent to Administrator Regan over at EPA regarding the RFS?
Yeah, I said we absolutely need to protect the RFS and maintain it, not mess with it. I mean, the administration, again, should be turning to our biofuel producers. We have an incredible opportunity right now, especially since we've experienced fuel supply challenges in this country. Our energy independence is being challenged, but it seems that the administration's looking the other way, instead prioritizing things like electric vehicle subsidies in our infrastructure proposals. And so when you look at these ethanol blend mandate reprieves, it would truly hurt our industry in Iowa when at a time when they should be turning to us to help reduce carbon emissions. I think the simple solution is if you raise the standard on ethanol blends, you help to reduce carbon emissions, which I think is the ultimate goal of where we need to be. So that's been the story that I'm telling here. If you want to bolster our national security and our fuel supply, turn to our biofuels industry because they're ready to go right now to decrease our dependence on foreign actors.
I love that. And the other thing is, if we are to believe what the Biden administration is saying about its commitment to fighting climate change, then biofuel use should be pointed up and fossil fuel use should be pointed down, Representative Hinson. And anything to discourage use under the RFS would counter that message.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because I've met this week with the auto dealers and I met with Iowa Corn as well. And there's consensus that this is not something that you can flip the switch on overnight, right? I mean, this is going to take a very long time. And in the immediate future, I mean, we have the solution ready to go. I understand things are evolving toward electric in many cases, but our farm equipment's not going to go fully electric overnight. Our cars for the roads are not going to go fully electric overnight. So that's why I think it's so important to consider this as a very valid option. Certainty for our biofuels producers, as well as our truckers who keep the supply chain up and running. So this would benefit so many different industries.
Exactly. Representative Hinson, we're out of time. Thank you so much. We'll talk with you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Chip.
You bet. That was